Alright, losers, today's review is on
私もお前をおかずにしたことがある。
Connect 5 caught my attention like it was a siren singing a song, and I was a maroon sailor lost at sea. Drama, slice of life, and romance. The holy trinity, the godhead of genres in my anime bible. Not only was Kokoro Connect in those genres, it also offered an interesting plot to boot. But just like our good old friend communism, sure, it might have looked nutty and nifty on paper, but when it came down to the actual execution, let's just say it was mildly disappointing. With the genre that's in and the way the plot is situated, the anime puts itself in like a feast or famine position where its success is tied directly to its characters. If they're incompetent, if they're not good, the show completely flops. Look, I'm not trying to insinuate that the show is bad or anything. The characters are far from what I would consider a swamp ass. Kokoro Connect is like my child. I'm an episode or two deep, a couple years into its adolescent years, and I can see the potential in it. Then the next few episodes come and go. The next few years pass, and only a bit of that foundation, that potential was used. But there's still time. I'm only a handful of episodes in. There's still time to grow. Sadly, the episodes came and went, and soon I finished the whole first season. My child is now a NEET, and the only time we talk is when we greet each other in the morning. I'm disappointed. However, this is my child. I can't just kick it out of the house. But even so, my disappointment grows, and as a gleam in my eyes, the last strand of hope, wishing that my child's potential would amount to something, slowly dims. I close my eyes and exit the room. As I'm about to make my leave, however, I hear a distant call.
To be fair, you have to have a high IQ to understand the redo of Healer. The story progression is extremely subtle.
It was my child. He's calling for me. Child, what is it? Dad, I know you think I'm amounting to nothing right now and just slowly withering away on the couch, but look, I've been working on something. What is it, son? There's a second wind. The gleam in my eyes refuses to go out. I refuse to give up on my child.
What is he doing?
He's beginning to believe.
Dad, I know my first season didn't really meet expectations, and that really bummed you out, but don't worry. I cooked something to cheer you up. What did you make me? Dad, I made you a season 2. Son.
This shit look nasty as fuck!
That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but Kokoro Connect could have been much better than how it currently is. It's not a bad anime. I don't feel like I wasted my time watching this, right? I was hooning and hollering here and there, and it kind of tugged at my balls a little bit, but realizing how it could have been so much better just inflicts me with like a different kind of pain. But I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I don't want to say too much about the show just yet. So I'm gonna digress. And instead, let's take a subtle dip into the characters.
Bitch, I'm gonna be in the spinner. Oh, rang-a-tang-a-bangin'.
So this 5-man drama squad consists of Inaba, Yagashi, Nagase, Kiriyama, and Oiki, who are all part of the Student Cultural Society, aka Stu CS, in their school. I'm gonna talk about the girls first and kind of group them up because even though they all have different personalities and were somewhat redeemable, all 3 of them get cucked by the same problem. So the show has a tendency to unveil these hard-hitting character developments, which is cool and all, I appreciate all that, but the issue is that when these bombs are dropped on us, the show doesn't go any further than just, telling us. For example, in Inaba's case, before that, I know this is gonna ruin the whole flow of things, but I gotta get this out there. I would let Inaba stomp me out any day of the week. Any day of the week. Y'all probably think that's weird, but hear me out, man. Masochism is super underrated. But let's get back to the topic at hand. For Inaba's case, we find out that she's extremely cynical in the sense that she absolutely can't trust anybody and was like that since birth. But that's sad. We don't get any flashbacks or anything to show or elaborate on it. Same shit with Nagase. She's the Genki one of the group, but is revealed to have an identity crisis. But once again, there's no flashbacks or anything to show for it. Running back with Kiriyama, she shakes, she quivers at the presence of a mere boy, and reveals that the reason behind that was because she was almost raped as a kid, which was pretty fucking rough to hear, seeing that it was just like the third episode or something. But once again, there was nothing to show for it. The problem with all this telling but not showing is that the show wants us to believe that these characters went through all this traumatic shit to get your panties soiled. But by not physically showing any of it happening, none of this trauma feels real. So when it comes to the many dramatic scenes where these three are going through some shit, the show starts to feel melodramatic because you're not completely attached to these characters and bought into the development that was shown. I'm being pretty picky, so obviously, if you don't look too deep into things, this isn't really an issue. You can still get attached to these characters pretty easily, which makes what I say earlier kind of redundant, but being picky is part of the whole, the reviewing experience, the process. So objectively speaking, the whole telling not showing thing is one of the issues that's holding these three back from being even better characters than they already are. Alright, now for the men, the boys, alright? First is Yagashi, and the perfect way I would scope or describe him as a character is that if you were to take the concept of a nice guy, the Redditor nice guy, and just do some simple math, subtract the degenerative Redditor shit from that ideal, just toss it in the trash, eat that shit somewhere, and just keep the pure image of I want to be a nice guy and help people. Yagashi would be the literal embodiment of that ideal. But it's like a double-edged sword though, because on one hand, that's what's so good about him. Whenever a problem appears, he wants to solve it, and in doing so, the plot moves and develops because of him. He comes off as a main character. It feels nice. He feels warm to be around when he appears in the anime. But on the other hand, because the foundation of his character is invested solely into that one trait of just wanting to help people, his actions and words feel very repetitive and one-dimensional in the latter half of the show. The majority of his scenes can be put into a fucking formula, which I would dub the Yagashi equation. So first, a problem arises, or a club member gets depressed, right? Yagashi obviously gets an erection from this because this is his turn on and wants to help. His reasoning behind this? Because he's a nice guy. And you insert like a melodramatic scene, somebody's fucking crying. Problem solved. Control C, Control V, rinse and repeat. The best comparison to the Yagashi equation would be the whole power friendship thing that happens in the shonen anime. Sure, it's cool the first time it happens, but it gets a little redundant if the anime starts abusing the formula like it's a goddamn hooker. But after Yagashi, we finally have Oiki. There's a saying, a little saying that goes around, and it goes something like this: "You always save the best for last." Well, that shit doesn't apply here. You would have to knock me out cold and drug me for me to claim that Oiki is not the shittiest person in the group, because he takes the cake for being the worst character in the show, objectively speaking. This fucking goober literally has two character traits: laid back and I love Kiriyama. And I don't even know if liking Kiriyama is a character trait, but I'm gonna add that shit in because I feel bad for him. But that's it. Those two character traits, that's it. There's even a scene where Heartseed calls him the most useless one out of the group, and it kind of put a little smirk on my face because it unintentionally breaks the fourth wall. But that's all I'm gonna say about him. He's a decent character if you don't look at things critically, but because he does give us, a couple horny boy moments here and there, he's redeemable somewhat, right? But that's just the icing on the cake. It doesn't mean much in the whole grand scheme of things. He'd be a pretty good hentai protagonist, I give him that, but if so, he's debuting in the wrong fucking genre. Alright, time to switch topics. So let's talk about the animation. The animation in this anime isn't something you would ever spaz over. The animation is like a bench player on a sports team. It does its job, right? And what it's assigned to do. But that's really it. It served a purpose and it played its role. There's no complaints, right? But no compliments either. There was a bit of moe blob and like shitty car CGI here and there. And there also wasn't any scenes that I can remember in particular that made my balls drop. So the animation was what it was. It just got the job done. Alright, now for the sound. From what my ears was telling me, The language that the characters were speaking was most definitely Japanese, so the voice acting gets a dicks up from me. For the opening, it was decent, but the weird thing is that even though I didn't think it was like crazy good, for some fucking reason I didn't skip it like a single time. So take that however you want. However, there's a bit more to talk about for the ending, specifically the first one, because this only applies to the first ending. So there's this thing that the anime does at the end of each episode where they do a compilation of all the dramatic lines and scenes of the next episode to hook you in and shit. The presentation of it was pretty dramatic, so when that little compilation is over and it has to transition to the ending, the first ending in particular just fit the whole vibe of things, right? So the transition was really fucking nutty. But like I said, this really only applies to the first ending because after they changed the ending to a more upbeat one, the whole end sequence kind of lost its magic. But for the few episodes it was there, it was pretty to witness.
ひょっとして今度は3人で入れ替わっちゃったのかな。なんでそんなマイナーな植物の名前が出てくるの。何かあってからじゃ遅いんだよ。僕その人じゃないですしね。
So for my ratings, the characters would range from a 6.5 to an 8, Orki being dead last, Kiriyama after him, Inaba and Yagashi next, and finally Nagase at the top. For the sound, I would give it a 7 to an 8. The voice acting held up pretty nicely, and even though the openings were alright, the endings, funny enough, were all boner gems. Lastly, the animation is a flat 7. Besides Oki single-handedly dropping the group average by himself, the animation is the weakest part of the show, which for me doesn't really mean anything. I know for a lot of people, animation is like the fucking golden standard when it comes to like rating animes and shit, but animation in my opinion is like the cherry on top. If the story and characters are good, the animation just has to play its part. With that, my overall rating is a 7 to an 8. I know I was dry humping the show for the majority of the review, and I like said like 0 things positive about it, but I want to reiterate what I said in the beginning. This anime is by far no means a bad show, but it could have been even better if it ironed out the little things here and there. And that's why I'm critiquing it only, because I saw the further potential that it had. I would honestly recommend it to your average viewer. If you're into the genre that it shows in, you're probably going to have a blast watching this anime. But besides the review, I want to talk about random shit, mostly my upload schedule. I know the gap between this video and the one before it is longer than Gustavo's dick, and that's pretty concerning seeing how gigantic his junk is, but that's just me being lazy and shit. This ain't gonna be a promise, but hopefully I'm gonna push out one video a week or two. But most definitely, I can guarantee this though, most definitely a couple of shorts in between the videos, seeing how that's just popping off and YouTube just did that like $100 million funding for it. But yeah, that's it. That's the review.